I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear
that you will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
And will, to the best of your ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
John F. Kennedy was inaugurated as President of the United States on January 20th, 1961. During his term, he made many changes and provisions that are well known today. Kennedy not only involved American affairs in the Caribbean, but continued to involve the U.S. in conflicts occurring in Southeast Asia. The previous President, Eisenhower, had established military advisors in Vietnam in order to help the South Vietnamese. Kennedy stuck with this policy, eventually having around 16,000 military advisors in Vietnam. This contributes to the theory that the Vietnam War would have continued to escalate even if Lyndon B. Johnson hadn't taken office. On November 22, 1963, John F. Kennedy was shot by a man named Lee Harvey Oswald. The reasons for the assassination weren't able to be determined because Oswald was shot by a man named Jack Ruby before he was able to stand trial or admit to the crime. Lyndon B. Johnson then took succession to presidency, inheriting Kennedy's office along with the problems concerning the Vietnam conflict.
In the final analysis, it's their war. They're the ones who have to win it or lose it. We can help them, we can give them equipment, we can send our men out there as advisors, but they have to win it, the people of Vietnam, against the communists. We're prepared to continue to assist them. But I don't think that the war can be won unless the people support the effort. And in my opinion, in the last 2 months, the government has gotten out of touch with the people.
John F. Kennedy's foreign policy in Vietnam led to rising tensions between diplomatic relations, leading an American war carried out by Lyndon B. Johnson following Kennedy's assassination is arguably one of the most important turning points in history. Johnson, ascending to the plate of president, was hit hard with many of Kennedy's previous provisions and unimplemented ideas towards the economy and the civil rights issues of the time. Though many of Kennedy's policies varied from Johnson's, Lyndon had kept most of them because of the tragic outcome of his predecessor. Johnson, like Kennedy, approved of American support in the Vietnam conflict, continuing American aid to South Vietnam. With the issues laying on Johnson's table, he was forced to rely on Kennedy's previous advisors who were working with Kennedy during his office. For Johnson's office, focus was strictly on the Vietnam conflict. South Vietnam's government was mismanaged and corrupt, essentially wasting much of the financial aid America was giving out. Not only was Kennedy out of the picture and the South Vietnamese government faltering, a few weeks before his assassination, the president of Vietnam, Ngo Diem Diem, and his brother were killed in a coup, weakening morale and changing a shift in power, putting the conflict into an approaching disaster.
I have today ordered to Vietnam the Air Mobile Division and certain other forces which will raise our fighting strength from 75,000 to 125,000 men almost immediately. Additional forces will be needed later, and they will be sent as requested.
Johnson, not willing to give up on the crusade in Vietnam, pushed further, allowing bombing raids to take place in order to weaken the North Vietnamese guerrillas known as the Viet Cong. These bombing runs continued without Congress approval for some time. Seeing that the bombing runs didn't falter the North Vietnamese guerrillas, Johnson realized he would need ground troops deployed in Vietnam. On August 2nd, reported incidents of U.S. naval forces being attacked by the North Vietnamese was sent out to America, allowing Johnson to go to Congress to gain military power in Vietnam without declaring war. Soon enough, Johnson's military actions were justified under a joint resolution made by Congress on August 7, 1964, reasoned to promote the maintenance of international peace and security in Southeast Asia. This was called the Tonkin Gulf Resolution. It stated that Congress approves and supports the determination of President as Commander-in-Chief to take all necessary measures to repel any armed attack against forces of the United States and to prevent any further aggression. This enabled Johnson to use military force in action in Vietnam without having to declare war. After this resolution was enacted, U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War drastically increased without Congress declaring war. Johnson continued American involvement in an effort to quell the North Vietnamese even after his election as president in 1964. On February 7, 1965, a station with many military advisors at Pleiku in South Vietnam was attacked by the Viet Cong with explosives and troops. This invoked great rage and desire for retaliation from many Americans, including Lyndon B. Johnson. When more attacks from the Vietnamese guerrillas continued, Johnson stayed strong with bombing runs. Still, this strategy was not budging the North to negotiate surrender. It was discussed thoroughly with Johnson and the higher-ups that America sending troops to defend advisors stationed in Vietnam was the decision that needed to be made. Exact words from Johnson asserts his assessment on the decision.
"I guess we've got no choice, but it scares the death out of me. I think everybody's going to think we're landing the Marines. We're off to battle."
On March 8, 1965, the first American combat troops were deployed under Lyndon B. Johnson. This was the first of many more to come. Throughout the rest of Johnson's term as president, America increasingly sent more troops to Vietnam, as support for South Vietnam by their own people was slipping. The war continued, but as it became widely unpopular and costly, Americans began protesting out against the war.
I am hopeful, and I will try with best I can with everything I've got to end this battle and to return our sons to their desires. Yet, as long as others will challenge America's security and test the dearness of our beliefs with fire and steel, then we must stand or see the promise of 2 centuries tremble.
Fearing that withdrawal from the war would be a sign of weakness and further wreck his political career, Johnson persevered through the rest of his term. As the election for presidency came in 1968, Johnson had long ago gave up on re-election due to the many political faults and unpopularity he acquired in his term. Running without competition, the Republican candidate Nixon was elected by a landslide. With Nixon as president, a new policy had been established which was known as Vietnamization. This policy was slow, but it continued withdrawal of American forces in Vietnam, ending U.S. involvement in the war.
There had to be another way in case the other side refused to negotiate. That path we called Vietnamization. What it meant was training and equipping the South Vietnamese to defend themselves and steadily withdrawing Americans as they developed the capability to do so. The path of Vietnamization has been successful.
Johnson wasn't able to live up to see the end result of the Vietnam War because on January 22, 1973, he passed away. The North Vietnamese went on to control the South Vietnamese government in April of 1975. Over the course of years, troops slowly began to evaporate from Vietnam back to America. The time it took to retrieve all of the American troops from Vietnam to America stretched on, but the troops eventually left Vietnam, ending Johnson's war. All in all, Kennedy's policy involving the Vietnam War was a starting line to the escalation to come following his death. Johnson's actions after succession to presidency changed the course of the war, as well as American government involving presidential power over military action, and contributed to civil rights. The assassination of John F. Kennedy has become one of the most important events to change history of America. The provisional changes it has caused to America have become everlasting as a legacy of one man inheriting an overwhelming situation.